The silent warning. The deep void of space was quiet. Too quiet, as if the stars themselves held their breath. On the edge of human territory, a listening post floated above a frozen moon. Its operators had grown used to silence, the kind of silence that makes a person forget they are part of a galaxy full of life. Then one night the silence broke. A signal arrived, faint and broken. It was not like any transmission the operators had heard before. It carried no language, no trade codes, no distress call. Instead, it was a low hum, steady, sharp, like a warning growl of a predator unseen. The young officer on duty frowned as the signal filled the room. His hands trembled as he tried to decode it, but every attempt failed. The signal resisted translation, twisting into noise whenever the system tried to make sense of it. "Maybe it's a natural wave," one of the crew said, trying to laugh it off. But the officer shook his head. His gut told him this was no accident. Hours later, the signal reached Earth's military command. There, the best minds gathered around the strange transmission. They ran it through 100 different filters, 1,000 different systems, yet every time the result came back the same, a warning hidden beneath the static. One old scientist leaned close to the speakers, his eyes widened as he whispered, "It's not a call for help, it's a threat." The room fell silent. No one moved. It was rare for any civilization to send a message like this. Most races in the galaxy used the Council of Worlds for disputes. But this was different. This was personal. It was a simple message, repeated again and again. "Do not cross into our territory." Human leaders gathered in secret halls. Some argued it was nonsense. Some called it a bluff. But others felt a chill deep in their bones. For there was something in the tone of that signal, something cold and sharp. As if the sender had no doubt they could carry out their promise. Despite the fear, humanity had always been bold. Exploration fleets were already charting the dark sector where the signal came from, and to retreat now would mean shame in front of the galaxy. The Council of Worlds had already heard whispers of the warning. If Earth backed down, it would look weak. So the order was given. A small fleet of 5 warships was sent to investigate the source of the signal. The crews were hand-picked, brave, and skilled. Their orders were clear: enter the forbidden sector, scan for life, and prove humanity. Feared no one. As the ships crossed into the black region of space, the stars themselves seemed to fade. The further they went, the darker it became, as if light itself refused to follow. The captains reported strange readings, sensors flickering, energy fields unknown. Yet no enemy appeared, only silence. Then, without warning, all 5 ships vanished from command screens. One moment they were there, the next they were gone. No distress calls, no explosions, nothing. Panic spread through the command center. They tried every channel, every frequency, but the fleet had disappeared as if swallowed whole by the void. For days, Earth waited. No word came. Rumors spread fast across the colonies. Some said the fleet had been destroyed by invisible weapons. Others whispered that they had been taken prisoner by an ancient power. Then, on the 7th day, a single ship returned. It drifted out of the dark sector like a ghost. Its hull was torn open in places, blackened by burns. The once proud human emblem was scarred beyond recognition. Emergency beacons flashed weakly, barely alive. A rescue crew boarded the broken ship. Inside, the air smelled of smoke and blood. Corridors lay in ruin and silence filled the halls. Only one survivor was found, curled in a corner, his eyes wide, hands shaking. When they brought him back to Earth, he was barely able to speak. Doctors surrounded him, demanding answers. At last, in a broken voice, he whispered, "They saw us before we even arrived," he said. His eyes darted around the room as if expecting shadows to follow him. "We didn't fight. We didn't even see them move." "What do you mean?" a general asked. The survivor gripped the table, his voice cracked as he repeated, "They didn't destroy us. They let me live." Gasps filled the room. Humanity was used to wars, to enemies who fought with honor or greed. But this was different. This was a power that did not even need to try. Then the survivor whispered one last thing before collapsing. Into unconsciousness, they didn't even use their real weapons. The room froze. A chill spread through every person who heard those words. The warning was clear. Humanity had just provoked something in the galaxy, something the stars themselves had tried to keep hidden. And now, it was awake. The survivors. The survivor's name was never released to the public. The government feared panic, they only called him the witness, and his presence was kept in a secure facility under heavy guard. When he finally woke from his coma, the doctors and generals were waiting. His body was thin, skin pale, but his eyes burned with fear no one could explain. At first, he refused to talk. Whenever they asked him about the mission, he shook his head and stared at the floor. Sometimes he mumbled words no one could understand. Sometimes he woke screaming, but slowly, piece by piece, the story came out. He told them of the dark sector, how the ships drifted deeper into the void. He spoke of a silence so heavy that even the sound of their own systems felt unnatural. The crew joked at first, laughed to keep away the fear, but inside, everyone felt the same weight pressing on their chest. Then, one by one, their ships stopped working. First, the lights flickered. Then the weapons jammed. Shields failed without warning. Engines refused to answer commands. It was as if invisible hands reached into the heart of their ships and tore away control. The survivor said he remembered. The moment it happened, a shadow moved across the stars, not one ship but hundreds, thousands, black shapes sliding out of the darkness. They didn't flash lights, they didn't broadcast messages, they just appeared like predators circling prey. The humans tried to fight. Missiles launched, cannons fired. But the shadows moved faster than thought. Every shot missed. And then, in less than a breath, the human ships began to fall apart. Not explode, not burn. Fall apart, metal twisted like paper, engines crumbled into dust, weapons bent as if crushed by unseen fists. The survivor swore he saw one of their ships sliced clean in half without a single shot fired. They didn't need weapons, he whispered to the generals. They are weapons. The generals exchanged uneasy glances. No record in the councils. Archives described such power. The survivor continued. He said the shadows swarmed around his ship. He expected to die like the others, but they didn't touch him. Instead, they surrounded his vessel, pressing close until the darkness outside felt alive. Then, a single light blinked on his console. A message burned into the screen. You are not ready. The survivor shook as he spoke the words. His voice cracked. It was like they knew me, like they looked into my mind. When asked why he survived, he had no answer. He only repeated the same thought again and again. They let me live so I could warn you. At that moment, fear spread even among the generals. If the Rithari, the name whispered in old legends, truly lived in the shadows, then humanity had done more than provoke them. They had woken them. The Council of Worlds called an emergency session. Aliens of every kind filled the chamber. Many were terrified. Some shouted that Earth must be punished for crossing the dark sector. Others demanded humanity retreat and beg for forgiveness. But the humans in the chamber refused to bend. One ambassador stood tall, voice firm. We will not bow to shadows, he said. If they wish to test us, let them come. The chamber erupted in chaos. Some called humans brave, others called them foolish. But the decision was made. Humanity would not retreat. Back on Earth, the survivor sat alone in his room. He scribbled drawings on the wall, shapes of ships too dark to see clearly, lines like claws and teeth hidden among the stars. When guards tried to take the drawings away, he grabbed their arm with surprising strength, his eyes wild. You don't understand, he whispered. They didn't destroy us because they don't see us as enemies. They see us as children. Those words spread quietly among the higher ranks. The thought was more terrifying than any battle. To be seen not as equals, not even as rivals, but as children by the deadliest race in the galaxy. And then, one night, the survivor vanished. Guards swore no one entered his room. The cameras showed only static during the hours of his disappearance. His bed was left behind, sheets still warm, his drawings scattered across the floor, on the wall, carved deep into The metal with something no human tool could have made were words that made the blood run cold. They are watching. Humanity strikes back. The survivors' disappearance shook the halls of power. The generals and leaders grew restless. If the enemy could reach inside their most guarded facility and take a man without leaving a trace, then humanity was already exposed. But fear was not the only reaction. Humanity had never been a species that hid behind walls for long. When challenged, they rose. They adapted. They fought. In a secret meeting under Earth's surface, the highest council of human leaders gathered. Their faces were grim. The words on the walls of the survivors' room haunted them. They are watching. If the Rithari truly saw humanity as children, then the only answer was to prove otherwise. "We cannot retreat," said Admiral Doran, his voice echoing in the chamber. "If we show weakness now, the entire galaxy will think us broken. We must strike not with fear but with fire," the room murmured. Some warned it was suicide. Others argued it was the only way. In the end, the decision was made. Humanity would send another fleet into the dark sector. This time, larger, stronger, prepared. The ships were equipped with experimental technology, weapons designed not for precision but for chaos, shields that bent light itself, engines that could twist gravity in short bursts. Humanity could not match the raw power of the Rithari, but they could be unpredictable. The fleet left Earth in silence, no celebrations, no songs, only determination. Families said goodbye as if it was the last time, and for many it would be as. The fleet entered the dark sector. Tension grew. The stars vanished again, swallowed by blackness. Every pilot gripped their controls tighter, waiting for the shadows to appear, and then they did. Hundreds of Rithari warships slid out of the void. Silent and perfect, their shapes were impossible to describe, like blades, like beasts, like nightmares made of metal and shadow. They surrounded the human fleet with terrifying ease. "Hold your ground," Admiral Doran ordered, his voice calm, even as the enemy closed in. For a long moment, neither side moved. The void between them felt heavy, charged. Then a single Rithari ship glided forward. Its surface shimmered like liquid darkness. On every human screen, the same message appeared, burned in alien symbols, "Leave." But humanity did not turn back. Instead, Admiral Doran gave the order, "Show them what we are." The human fleet opened fire. The void lit up with explosions. Missiles streaked across the darkness, beams cut through the silence. For a heartbeat, humanity roared against the shadows. The Rithari moved, their ships blurred like phantoms, dodging shots as if they knew them before they came. In seconds, 3 human ships were torn apart, their remains scattered into the endless black. Yet the rest of the fleet held their ground. They unleashed their chaotic weapons. Warheads that split into 1,000 fragments. Engines that bent gravity and pulled Rithari ships into sudden collisions. Shields that shimmered like broken mirrors, confusing enemy sensors. For the first time in recorded history, the Rithari stumbled. One of their ships clipped another, its perfect grace broken. Sparks flew across its shadowed hull. The galaxy, watching through hidden channels, gasped as the impossible happened. "They bleed," whispered a pilot, voice trembling. The humans fought on, losing ships with every strike, but gaining something far more valuable, proof. Admiral Doran stood on the bridge of his flagship, eyes locked on the Rithari fleet. "We will not bow," he said, his words recorded and sent across every human channel. "If they are gods, then let them know we do not kneel." At that moment, the Rithari fleet stopped. Every shadowed ship froze. In place, their movements halted as if a command had been given from something higher. Then, as suddenly as they had appeared, they vanished, one by one. Their ships dissolved into the void, leaving only silence. The human fleet floated in the dark, broken, wounded, but alive. When they returned, the galaxy was in shock. Humanity had not won, but they had not been erased either. And that alone was enough to send ripples through every council, every throne, every empire. The Rithari had been challenged, and for reasons no one understood, they had chosen to pull back. In the Council of Worlds, whispers grew. Some said the Rithari were testing humanity. Others believed they were amused. But one truth became clear. Humanity had just done what no other species dared. They had stood against the deadliest civilization in the galaxy and survived. Back on Earth, Admiral Doran looked up at the stars from his window. His fleet was scarred, his people broken, but his heart carried a strange fire. "They let us live again," he muttered. But this time they hesitated, and in that hesitation, humanity saw their chance. The deadliest civilization. The galaxy was never the same after that battle. The Rethari had shown themselves again, and the Council of Worlds trembled. For centuries, the Rethari had been nothing but a shadow in history, whispered in stories told to frighten children. Some said they were myths. Others said they had died long ago. But now every race knew the truth. They were alive, they were strong, and they were watching. Ancient archives were opened, forgotten scrolls and records pulled from dust. Scholars searched for every trace of Rethari history. What they found chilled the blood of even the oldest species. Long before humans rose from the dirt of Earth, the Rethari had already ruled the stars. They had built empires so vast that entire galaxies were theirs. Their ships darkened suns, their armies crushed civilizations before they could even speak their own names. One record described the fall of the Vanar, a brilliant race who believed knowledge was the key to survival. The Vanar had built fleets of crystal ships powered by suns, yet when they challenged the Rethari, they vanished in a single night. Not one survivor was ever found. Another tale spoke of the Cathal, a warrior empire that spanned 5 galaxies. They fought for centuries against the Rethari, never surrendering, never bowing. But in the end, their homeworlds burned, and the Cathal were reduced to ashes. The most terrifying part was not the destruction itself, but the silence that followed. The Rethari never conquered, never enslaved, never took tribute. They simply erased their enemies and disappeared back into the dark, leaving nothing but fear behind. The council chamber shook with arguments. Some species begged humanity to surrender, to kneel before the Rethari before it was too late. Others whispered that humanity had already gone too far, that blood was the only answer the Rethari would accept. But humanity was different. On Earth, ordinary people heard the stories of the Rethari. Instead of fear, there was anger. Instead of silence, there was fire. They remembered the survivors' words. They didn't even use their real weapons. And Admiral Doran's defiance, "We will not bow." For the first time in ages, the galaxy saw a race that did not tremble. Human scientists studied the ruins of the returned fleet, every scar on the hulls, every melted weapon, every shattered circuit. They mapped the damage and realized something. The Rethari's attack had not been full power, it was controlled, precise, a test. "It means they don't see us as equals," one scientist said. "They are measuring us, weighing us, deciding if we are worth their attention." That thought spread across Earth. It lit a spark in the human heart. Humanity had been underestimated before, by empires, by enemies, by nature itself. And every time they had adapted, this would be no different. In the Council of Worlds, tension rose. A draconian warlord slammed his clawed fist against the table. "Do you fools not understand? The Rethari cannot be beaten," he roared. "The galaxy itself is alive because they allow it." But the human ambassador only smiled, his voice calm, sharp. "Then let us be the first mistake they ever make." Silence followed. The words, spread like fire, carried across the stars, replayed in hidden corners for the first time in history. The galaxy dared to imagine a future where the Rethari were not gods but opponents. Meanwhile, deep in the Black Sector, the Rethari watched. Inside their colossal command vessel, a structure larger than moons, the Rethari leaders gathered. There, forms were shadows given shape, eyes burning with alien fire. One of them spoke in a voice that seemed to vibrate through space itself. "The humans do not retreat," it said. "They strike even when crushed." Another answered, "They are young, reckless, but dangerous." A silence lingered before the eldest among them spoke, a voice like the death of stars. "Perhaps it is time the galaxy remembers who we are." And with those words, the deadliest civilization in history began to stir. Back on Earth, Admiral Doran stood at the window of his war room. He watched the stars, knowing the Rithari were out there waiting. He clenched his fist, his voice low. "They think we are children," he said. "Then let us show them how fast children can grow." Humanity's gamble. The name of the Rithari spread across every colony, every newsfeed, every whispered corner spoke of them. Some races hid in fear, others prepared for surrender. But humanity did something different. They gambled on Earth. The brightest scientists and the boldest generals gathered. They knew they could never match the Rithari in raw strength. Their technology was older, their fleets smaller, their resources limited, but humans had something no one else did. Creativity. Human. History was filled with desperation. They had fought with sticks when enemies had swords. They had flown with patched wings when the skies rejected them. They had survived plagues, storms, wars, and even their own mistakes. And every time they adapted now, facing the deadliest race in the galaxy, they would do it again. Deep underground, labs began to hum with energy. Weapons that defied logic were built, cannons that fired not one beam, but dozens of unpredictable bursts, warheads that split into clouds of burning fragments, shields that bent and twisted like waves, confusing enemy fire. Engineers designed ships that looked broken on purpose, jagged and uneven, machines that moved in strange, chaotic patterns. The idea was simple. The Rithari could predict perfection, but chaos would confuse them. Admiral Doran stood among the engineers as the first prototypes were tested. A small drone zigzagged through space, impossible to track. His lips curled into a rare smile. "Good," he muttered. "They will not expect this." While humanity built in secret, their enemies in the council mocked them. The Drethan delegates laughed at the humans' desperation. "You cannot trick shadows," they sneered. "You will only make them angry." But the humans did not care. When the new fleet was ready, humanity did not hide it. They broadcast images of their strange ships across the galaxy, jagged monsters of steel and fire, and then they sent out a message. "To the Rithari," Admiral Doran's voice echoed across the stars. "You call us children, but children grow. You say we are not ready, then come test us, we will not kneel." The message shocked the galaxy. Billions watched in disbelief. No race had ever spoken to the Rithari like this. No race had ever dared. For days, the galaxy waited for an answer. Silence stretched across the void. But then it came. From the darkness of the forbidden sector, a single Rithari ship emerged. It was massive, its hull black as the void. Symbols burned red across its surface. Its presence alone made smaller ships shudder as if the void itself bowed before it. The message was short, carved into space itself with impossible energy. "We accept." The words echoed like a death sentence. Humanity prepared. Every ship armed, every soldier ready. Families held their breath, knowing that this battle might decide not only Earth's fate, but the fate of every race watching. On the day of departure, the human fleet gathered near Saturn. Hundreds of ships, patched and scarred, carrying the strange, chaotic weapons. They looked small compared to the Rithari giant drifting in the void, but behind those ships burned a fire no darkness could erase. Admiral Doran stood on the bridge of his flagship. His officers looked to him for strength. He raised his head, voice steady. "Today we gamble everything, not because we seek war, but because we will not live in chains. If we fall, let the galaxy remember that humans did not bow." The fleet cheered, voices trembling but proud. Then, the battle began. The Rithari ship unleashed its power. A single wave of energy swept through the void, tearing apart human shields. Engines shook, alarms screamed, entire vessels cracked open like shells. But the humans struck back. Their chaotic weapons filled the void with light. Warheads scattered into clouds of molten fragments, blinding the Rithari sensors. Shields bent and twisted, reflecting beams into strange arcs. Engines dragged the enemy's attacks into empty space. For a moment, just a moment, the Rithari faltered. The galaxy watched in shock. It was not a victory, but it was not annihilation either. Humanity had survived the first strike. Admiral Doran's voice rang out across every channel. "Do you see us now?" he demanded. "We are not children. We are not prey. We are humanity. And we fight." The Rithari ship paused, its weapons quiet for the first time. Silence spread across the battlefield, heavy, suffocating. Then, instead of finishing the humans, the massive vessel pulled back. Its dark hull shimmered as it drifted into the void, and on every human screen, a new message appeared. "You are interesting. Clash in the dark." The galaxy waited as humanity prepared for war. For some, it was madness. For others, it was hope. But no one could deny that the fire of Earth had spread into every corner of the stars. The Rithari answered that fire. From the black sector, their fleets emerged, not one, not 10, but hundreds, ships as vast as mountains, shapes that bent light itself. They drifted into the void with silent hunger. The galaxy trembled. Admiral Doran stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the endless wall of shadows. Around him, the human fleet burned with nervous energy, ships small compared to the Rithari titans, but restless, alive, ready. The order came. Engage. Human. Ships roared forward, their chaotic weapons fired in storms. Missiles burst into clouds of fire. Beams split into unpredictable arcs. Gravity engines bent the paths of enemy blasts. It was not elegance, it was chaos, pure and wild. And for the first time, the Rithari hesitated. Their ships tried to move, with their perfect precision, but human tactics bent the field. A Rithari vessel collided with another, sparks of alien fire spilling into space. Gasps echoed across the galaxy as the impossible happened. The shadows stumbled, but the victory was thin. The Rithari responded with fury. Their ships unleashed waves of energy that crushed human shields like paper. Entire squadrons disappeared in a flash. Screams cut short. Families on Earth watched their sons and daughters vanish into silence. Still, humanity fought on. Admiral Doran's voice thundered across the fleet. "Do not break. Do not bow. This is the test of who we are." Pilots wept in their cockpits but held the line. Soldiers clung to their stations as fire tore through the hulls. Engineers patched systems with their bare hands. Humanity bled, but it did not fall. Then came the turning point. A small corvette, damaged and burning, spun out of formation. Its pilot, a young woman with no rank, no fame, locked her ship's broken engines into overdrive. She screamed into the comms, "For Earth!" and rammed her vessel into the heart of a Rithari cruiser. The explosion lit the void like a newborn star. The Rithari ship cracked, its shadow bleeding light for the first time in history. The galaxy gasped. Admiral Doran slammed his fist on the console. "They bleed," he roared. "Press them." The human fleet surged. Chaos became fury. Ship after ship launched desperate attacks. Some were torn apart, others struck true. For every human loss, a Rithari vessel staggered. The clash raged in the dark. The void itself became a battlefield of fire and shadows. Humanity did not win, but it did not lose. The impossible was happening. Humans were holding the line. From deep within their command vessel, the Rithari leaders watched. Their eyes burned with cold fire. For the first time in countless ages, they saw prey refuse to run, refuse to die quietly. "They are reckless," one Rithari said. "They are flawed, but they adapt." Another replied, "They strike with madness and yet survive." The eldest Rithari leaned forward, voice like stone breaking. "Perhaps they are not children after all." Back in the battlefield, silence fell. The Rithari fleet halted. The shadows pulled back. One by one, their ships dissolved into the black, leaving only wreckage and silence. The human fleet floated among the ruins, scarred, broken, but alive. Soldiers wept. Pilots clutched their controls. Engineers slumped against dead consoles. Admiral Doran stood tall, his heart pounding. "They pulled back," he whispered. "They could have ended us, but they didn't." The surviving crews looked around, their screens flickering with one final message, carved into the void in alien light. "The trial is not over." The galaxy shivered. Humanity had not been destroyed, but the deadliest civilization had not finished with them either. This was only the beginning. The turning point. The battlefield hung silent after the retreat. Wreckage floated through the void, human ships cracked and broken, Rithari vessels vanishing like mist. The galaxy watched, breathless, waiting for what would come next. On Earth, billions gathered before screens, their eyes filled with fear and hope. For the first time in history, they had seen the Rithari pause. Humanity had not been erased. Humanity had stood. Admiral Doran sat on the bridge of his flagship. His uniform, torn, his face scarred. Around him the crew whispered prayers and curses. Some wept, some laughed in disbelief. He stared into the black sector, knowing the Rithari were still there, watching. Then, without warning, space rippled. A single ship appeared, larger than any ever seen before. Its presence dwarfed moons. Its hull was alive with burning symbols that shifted like fire. The stars dimmed around it as if afraid to shine. The crew froze. Some whispered that this was the end, that the Rithari had come to finish what they started. But the ship did not attack. Instead, a voice filled every human channel, deep and vast, vibrating through bone and steel. "You strike against the dark," the voice said. "You endure where others fall." The humans trembled. The galaxy listened, for no one had heard the Rithari speak in living memory. Admiral Doran stood, his voice steady though his heart thundered. "We are not prey," he said. "We are not children, we are humanity, and we will never bow." There was silence. Then the Rithari's voice returned, softer, sharper. "You are reckless, flawed, fragile, yet you resist." On Earth, children and elders alike listened as if the stars themselves spoke to them. For the first time, the deadliest race in history acknowledged humanity. The Rithari continued, "We came to test, to see. If you could stand, most fall, most beg, but you do not." The crew exchanged glances, fear mixed with pride. Admiral Doran raised his chin. "If you came to test us, then you have your answer," he said. "We will fight, no matter how impossible. No matter how great the darkness," the alien silence stretched. Then the words came, slow, deliberate. "Perhaps you are worthy after all." The galaxy gasped. In every council hall, in every empire, rulers and kings fell silent. The Rithari had spoken words no one thought possible. Humanity had been seen, not as prey, not as children, but as something more than. As quickly as they had appeared, the colossal Rithari vessel dissolved into the dark, its presence gone, but its words burned into memory. Back on Earth, the celebrations began, not of victory, but of survival. Families hugged their wounded soldiers. Scientists studied the wreckage with renewed fire. The human spirit soared. Admiral Doran stood alone in his quarters, staring out at the stars. His body ached, his heart heavy with the names of the fallen, but a fire still burned in his chest. He whispered into the silence, "They thought we were children, but now they know we are humanity, and we will not stop here." Across the galaxy, whispers spread. Some races saw hope, others saw danger, but none could deny the truth. The balance of power had shifted. The Rithari had been untouchable for ages, their name enough to silence worlds, but now, a new name joined them in the halls of legend, humanity. The turning point had come. The galaxy would never forget the day the deadliest civilization hesitated, and they would never forget the race bold enough to make them pause.